is still the same person. You're not a different person. You may be a different person per se, but you still have all the capabilities and the power and the strength and the worthiness that you do right now to become that person. So stop waiting for something magical to happen and realize that you are who you are today. And that's the same person that you can be who you want to be 10 years from now.
Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith, and if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and you want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You can find the links down below. However, before you do that, and before you go and hit a 5-star review and drop a knowledge bomb of this episode, actually, yeah, this is going to be good. This is going to be good, friends. Got a wonderful fella here. His name is Chase Smith.
Thanks so much for having me, Kyle.
My pleasure, my friend. So, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And I like to start the podcast with a very open-ended question. And it really brings to the essence of my philosophy that people are here to help other people. So on that note, Chase, my man, how do you impact the lives of the people around you?
Oh man, you're right. That's a very open question. I feel like you take it in a million different directions here. I mean, my purpose in life has definitely changed a lot throughout the last probably 4, 5, 6 years. It all started back in 2019. I was working as a registered nurse at the time and was, that was like my calling, that I was going to be a nurse. And I worked as a nurse for a good while. I worked in psych mental health nursing, also worked in the emergency department as well, did some travel nursing for about 1.5 years as well. And then throughout the middle of my nursing career, I then started my own personal health journey, both from a mental health perspective and a physical health perspective, losing weight and getting control of my health. And then got into coaching. Like after I saw like what my coach did for me, and everyone else started asking me, how did you do it? Can you help me? And it more so turned into like, oh, maybe I could actually help some other people with this. And so I kind of started learning more about nutrition, got certified nutrition and personal training and all that stuff, and eventually became a coach myself. And it was just more of like a side gig kind of thing for a while I was working still in nursing full time. And then I was also doing the coaching as well. And then eventually I started to think more about like, I love nursing. Like, don't get me wrong, I love it a ton, but it was almost like it was too late when they were there for me and working in emergency nursing, because it was like, I'd have these people on the stretcher in front of me in the emergency department. And it was like, man, like, what if somebody was there years ago to help you to not get to where you were at today? Right. Like obviously there are a lot of people that are, maybe have trauma or something like that, like, that's a whole different, like a car accident. It's not something I could have like helped them with years ago, but somebody with like a lot of chronic health conditions and things like that, heart disease, diabetes, a lot of other problems, we could have taken care of that years ago. And then maybe they would not be on the hospital stretcher in front of me right now. So I always thought like, how could I do more of that? And also just complete transparency as well. I was also starting to get burnt out of nursing as well. It's just I switched to the ER right before COVID happened. And so then I worked through all the entire pandemic on the emergency department. A lot of stress there, and eventually got burnt out there. And I felt more pulled towards coaching. And that's when I went into coaching full time, left nursing altogether back April of 2022, worked all through coaching throughout and up until now. And then just recently in March of this year, I merged with another company as well. And now I work with them. But that is how I help people, is understanding like where I've been and helping them like steer in a different direction before they get as far down that road as I did.
I absolutely love that. And the moment that you said, there's a couple of things that really resonate with your story. I think one thing that's really cool is congratulations on recognizing that shift, like that moment where you said 4, 5, 6 years ago. My partner and I, Kendra, we talk about it all the time, where it was 5 years ago where we really like buckled things in. And there's a couple other moments where there's just been kind of like not defining moments, not like an hour of something, but there's been a year where it's a chapter of our life where we really get to see the trajectory. Same here. And I think that's really cool because that takes like reflection, that takes awareness, self-awareness and reflection to be able to understand like the lessons that you went through. And dude, when I your story very much resonates with mine because I was in the culinary arts industry
Okay.
and then not the best habits, and then got my own coach uh, to learn more. And it was also that experience that got me into it as well.
Mhm.
So actually on the note of coaches, because I have the philosophy that coaches should have coaches. And I think that when coaches have coaches, they practice what they preach. And I find that for myself, it's been easier to offer up coaching when I know that I also have my own coaching.
Mhm.
So what do you think are some misconceptions about the client coach relationship, or things that people don't see because they only look at the tip of the iceberg, where people are like the boot camper, like, oh, blah, you're going to fucking go hard, bruh. Get up, like super hardcore like that. So I feel like that kind of look discourages people from investing in their health and into another coach. So what are your thoughts on that one, dude?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point that it's the cover of it is more so like given I always a lot of things that we kind of talk about a lot inside of our coaching is like give them what they want and then give them what they need kind of thing. So it's like when they're first coming into coaching, like, yeah, you talk about like, oh yeah, we're gonna help you lose weight, we're gonna help you build, we're gonna help you get strong, look jacked, toned, like all the things that they're wanting. But it's like once you actually get inside of our coaching, it's like, all right, like yeah, we're gonna get all that, but that's gonna be actually the side effect. Like we're gonna help like actually change your life as well because we're gonna look at how are your relationships with yourself and your family, your friends, loved ones. Are you happy in your life with like with your job, with your just with your social life? All of that is involved with coaching as well. I think a lot of people look at like they do look at like the boot camp style where it's like the coach like coaching them and like yelling at them or either with excitement or frustration like either way and like sure that can be some of it but like I was having a lot of conversations lately with I've had a couple of clients that have been going through a lot of really hard stuff, either through like, losing like family or having some family struggle. I have one that's struggling with family member with dealing with addiction. I have another one that, has just lost their pet. I mean, like a lot of people going through a lot of different things right now. And I told them I was, they're frustrated. And I should also point out, like they've been crushing it, right? Like they've been losing weight, absolutely killing the program, and now they have these speed bumps and these speed bumps are now slowing them down and they feel like they're doing something wrong and they almost come to me and they're like they feel like they're upset and that I'm going to be upset with them, and I tell them I'm like that's not how this is, that's not how this works. Like I always say cheerleading is a part of coaching, but that's not what coaching is. Coaching actually starts when you are struggling. Coaching actually starts when you are having the bad days and the bad weeks. That is when I actually get to coach you. I can be your cheerleader all day long when you're losing weight, dropping pant sizes, and feeling confident and on top of the world. Like, sure, that's awesome. I'll be right there celebrating with you. But I'm just your cheerleader if I'm just doing that. I want you to come to me when you feel like everything is coming down, crashing down around you, so we can pull you back up and you can feel confident to pick back up where you're at and keep going.
That is that is awesome. I'm definitely going to steal that, where coaching starts when you're struggling. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love that because I think something that's cool with that is that it does create clear boundaries, because people are going to have the honeymoon phase, right? Where things are like starting and learning. Some people have growing pains where it's adjusting to the program or adjusting to a
Mm-hmm.
different lifestyle than they're used to. But there is the point where the speed bumps do happen, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and we can try to
Yes.
mitigate as much of that as possible. But you're totally right, like it's going to happen no matter what, because there's only so much that we can control, and life is just a crazy whirlwind of different like experiences, and anything can
Mm-hmm.
happen, right? And that is so true, where it's like starting as the cheerleader, rah rah, and then it gets into the coaching when things get struggling. And well said, dude. I'm gonna clip that one for sure.
Awesome.
So good. There was also something that was very, very huge that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on, because I think it's actually, in my opinion, like I think that a majority of folks are either behaving from a place of good intentions or ill intentions, from a place of compassion or a place of judgment. And I like to make it so that people are more aware of which filter they're kind of perceiving the world through. And I'm just aware of it. So I'm just looking, it's like, okay, what could that person's intentions be? Not judging, but just observing, and then just meeting it from a place of compassion where it's like just being there for an individual kind of idea, right? And it just makes it easier for me to like know how to show up with peeps. And something that you said there that I absolutely love is, what if you could help someone earlier? And when you said that, I just felt nothing but compassion. There was just like an air of just care. And I think that that is one of the coolest things, where it's a prehab rather than a rehab. It's
Mhm.
trying to nip this, it's trying to nip the cause in the butt before the symptoms have an opportunity to manifest.
Yep.
And I think that that's a cool perception that you get to see from nursing, and then the extremes of ER, and then you have you have the ability to see both sides. Like you could say like, we're doing this thing, you have these symptoms and conditions, you can actually read the future, man, because you can actually
Mhm.
see, I have seen what this is like 10 years from now if you don't change anything. And that's a beautiful, beautiful place to be, from a place of observation and information. Like you're seeing the timeline of an individual. So I think the information and the conversations that you get to have as a coach resonate so much heavier. I think I'll go with heavier on this one, just because it's
Mhm.
like, ooh, that's real. Like it's like that realness heavy. And that, I think that's so cool, man. So you kind of mentioned it before, but you had your own coach. And I like to think that everyone's a person that's a coach or trying to help people improve their lives usually has some sort of a mess that has become their message. So did you find that it was, what was your mess, and how was that shift? Like, you, obviously there was nursing and stuff like that, but was there more to it? Was there something that was just like, I'm fucking done?
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I mean, this kind of goes back to, and I think like I'm also, and I'll be the first one to like admit to anybody. I mean, anybody can kind of discuss this looking at me. Like I'm obviously not, the guy that's like six pack abs and things like that right now. Like, but I'm a lot. But if people know me from where I started, back in 2019, I was almost 400 pounds, and I was at a point where I was just spiraling, and mental health was shot, and physical health was not good as well. Don't get me wrong. Like I never had like a huge like health scare. Now, I'm not saying I was healthy by any means, but I never had like, there's some people that come to you and they're like, hey, I just had a heart attack. I need to get my life under control before I actually die. Like I thankfully did not have that kind of really big pivotal moment, but I was always the chronic yo-yo dieter. I tried all the different diets and since I was like probably like 12 or 13 years old. And then I actually back in 2019, a friend and coworker that I was working with at the psych mental health hospital, a good friend of mine, she was like, hey, I know you want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. How about we do a little friendly challenge and we can see who can lose the most weight? And that's honestly how this entire thing got started. Like I always love like thinking like, Cal, you and I probably wouldn't be talking right now today if it wasn't for her. Cause like she's the one that like she started this entire thing. Like granted, like I'm not saying like she has followed me all the way through this entire journey, but it all started at that single pivotal moment, January 1st, 2019, when we started this challenge. And so when we started doing that for a while, and I was losing a lot of weight, and eventually we ditched the challenge just because one, I had a whole lot more to lose than she did, and I didn't want her feeling like like, oh, he's beating me every single month by losing more. Yeah, because I had probably 100 more pounds to lose than she did, and so I was losing at a faster rate. So we just the challenge side of things, but we focused more on like, hey, let's continue to push each other, going to the gym, eating better, and we're both seeing great progress. And that's how all of this started. And so that was really my mess. Was like I could have cared less about my own health. And especially as someone, and I'm sure if anyone's a nurse that's listening to this, they can definitely resonate with this because we're so used to putting every single person first in front of us. Like I'd rather skip all my bathroom breaks and skip my meals and eat cold pizza from the break room and take care of my patients, right? Like that's what it was when you're working as a nurse. Like you don't really pay attention to your own health. And so that was what I was doing for such a long period of time before 2019. And then I started to take my own health under my own control. And that's where that mess went to my message now. And I help people realize like it doesn't have to be that way. And it doesn't have to be the complex yo-yo diets. It doesn't have to be insane, extreme dieting. Like it can be sustainable. It can be focusing on longevity and quality of life and shifting all areas of your life other than just like, going to the gym for 5 hours a day and eating salad all day long.
Yeah, that's good, dude. That's awesome. I really dig that. Do you have, so with the shift from seeing the back end, then trying to help people in advance, do you have like a vision or like something that you want to fulfill that's kind of in those realms where it started? What's the big vision of yours, I suppose?
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm
You
just
know,
putting
I
people on the spot, hey.
I know you're no, I love this. I think it's great. It makes me think more, but um, there's so many things like so as I mentioned a little bit ago, I recently merged with another company. I took my company Chasing Health and merged it with Conquer Fitness and Nutrition, and I'm working with Chris Bielhan, who's the CEO of Conquer, and I'm now working as his COO. And our mission is just to really, radically transform lives through wellness and building community. And like that is our biggest thing. It's like how can we impact so many more people with understanding that they're not alone, building that community. And we love having our community get together as much as we can online. And even just a couple months ago we held our first in-person event, where we were all able to get together, about 20 to 30 of us. And our community is almost at 100 right now, online. And so just reaching more and more people and helping them realize that they're not alone in this and that they can be successful themselves.
That's awesome. Oh, I love it when I'm chatting with podcast guests and just like hearing their vibes, just or hearing their stories, just like gets the heart all warm. Freaking love that, man. That's good. I love that. I think the pursuit of like improvement all around for humans is just like there's just nothing better to bring people together than supporting each other in that kind of way. It's really cool. Trying to think of like a real neat question off of all of that, but where is it where is it that you found in your story, where have you found the narratives shift the most from when you were up to the 400 mark compared to now? What kind of narratives or self-talk or dialogue did you shift to become the person that you are today?
I think it more so had to do with just like along the lines of like worthiness, but also like understanding that I can change. Like I do have the power to change. I think back, years ago when I was close to 400 pounds, it was more so like, this is just who I am. Like I'm going to be that nurse that just works, many days a week as I can, and, slave labor over my patients and things like that. Like in a nice way. Obviously, I don't mean that, mean towards patients at all, but like, that's just how I thought my life was going to be. Like, who cares about the, my weight and my physical health and my mental health? Like just go into work, get the job done and go home. And even it's funny when I look back, I tell people when I was going through nursing school, like I remember my nutrition course, I absolutely hated. And then now I'm helping people with their nutrition. And it's just because I didn't care about that back then. Like that was not what I really cared about. And so now it's more so like I have a different perspective on realizing that anything's possible when you actually set your mind towards that. And when you actually start giving up the excuses that you don't have the ability to change. I think, so many people love to hide in this I can't identity, and like they just feel like there's no way they can ever change and they feel stuck. And I get that. Like I've been there, but I also have seen the other side when you start to realize like actually you do have the power to change. And you keep telling yourself these BS narratives that you can't change, that you don't have that control, you don't have the power. when you really do. I mean, like everyone, I mean, you look at anyone that is like, sure, there's some luck involved with some people in certain situations, but I believe that there's, I mean, you look at any like professional, like, you know, I'm not a big sports person, so I'm not going to name off like a lot of names and act like I know what I'm talking about here. But like, think about like, LeBron James, like, right, like he had to take hundreds of shots to finally get good at it. Tiger Woods had to take tons of swings before he finally got good at it. Like, you have to keep just showing up for yourself and becoming the person you want to be. Because if you keep sitting back on the sidelines and just hoping that it's going to eventually change, it's not. You have to take control, that actually start taking messy action and start taking imperfect action and realizing that, yes, you're going to screw up a lot. That's okay. That's expected. But you're never going to succeed unless you keep trying. The only way you ever fail is if you stop trying at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a mental reframe that's been really helpful for me is switch whenever I say the words can't, I whip it over to won't instead.
Yes.
And I found that that's been very helpful, because can't, it indicates that the ability to change the circumstances are outside of our control. Won't puts the power back in our hands by just allowing us to acknowledge we just don't want to do it, but we're making the active choice. And I think the thing that's cool with that is, or at least for myself, is when I shift it, even if I say can't, it's like low energy vibe where it's like, then I feel guilty or shameful, right? But if I say won't and still choose not to do it, I don't feel that. And it's interesting that even like words like that, even if it's the same outcome where we're not doing the thing that we know we logically should be doing or could be doing to get to where we want to go, but it's interesting how those words just completely shift the vibes. And I think this can't narrative, this can't lie that we tell ourselves all the time it's on it. I think it would be really preventing a lot of people from doing really cool shit. And there's like so many cool things out there. It's like, I forget, I'm going to paraphrase it, but there's a quote where it's like, the graveyard is the wealthiest place on the planet, but that's where all the dreams went to die,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. And the only thing that probably stopped the majority of the people that never seen a dream or a goal come to fruition is them repeating the word can't instead
When
of
it's
won't.
and it's also fear. Like, people put this fear in themselves that, like, of all the worst outcomes, but it's like, what could happen if you succeeded, right? Like, people never look at that as well. Like, they look at too much of like, if I mess up, this will happen. If I screw up this, if I fail at this, if that. But it's like, what if you win? What if you succeed? What if you do this? Like, a lot of times the worst case scenarios are just minimal things. Like, okay, you look like a dumbass. Sorry if I'm going to give a
Go
cuss on
ahead.
the podcast,
You're
but
good.
like, sorry if you look that way, but guess what? Like, there's probably a million other people out there that are hoping to do the same thing and are sitting on the sidelines. You're the one actually taking action and deciding, I'm going to actually do this.
Something that's been really helpful as well is like visualizing a hockey stick. And people think that it's like an acceleration, like a rocket ship, right? But I like to like bring or set the expectation that progress is like a hockey stick where it's really, really, really flat. And then how you mentioned luck, I think of luck as an equation where it's preparation plus opportunity meet. So
Yes.
luck is opportunity and preparation and just vibing at the same time. And when those things, the more we do something, the more volume and the more input we put, then the higher the probability that we're going to accomplish something, even if we look silly or even if we're scared right now. And as we go along the hockey stick, at some point, all those pieces are just going to come together, and then it propels. So it's like we just need some folks just, or for myself at least, extending the timeline. I think extending the timeline by 2 than I think it'll probably take decreases that expectation of getting things done fast and then just getting frustrated and stopping. Because it's interesting. I think it's interesting that we get frustrated and then we stop, even though it's just probably the variable of time, which we have no control over. That's the only thing that we need to put in. Everything else could be dialed in, but just that duration and then that resistance to patience, it's like, ugh, it's brutal, man.
think you have to also look at, I tell people all the time, remove the deadline too. Like some people are somebody hooked, they're hooked to the deadline where it's like, I have to accomplish this by then. And like, now don't get me wrong, I'm all for setting goals for yourself and like having some sort of deadline for yourself in mind. But with that, you also have to be flexible with it as well. Right. And because that being said, like, what if you have like that $1 million idea and you're like, I'm going to have this written out and ready to go by, you know, 2024. Okay, like that's awesome. I love that plan. Well, what happens if you get to December 31st and you have like 5 more days of work? Are you now a failure if you get to January 5th and you didn't have it done till then? No. Like you have to be flexible. Like the deadline increases speed, but speed, of course, is not always the importance of this. Like speed is important because it gets you started rather than sitting back and having paralysis by analysis. It keeps you going, but you need to be flexible in the approach of like, hey, if I'm on that general direction and I'm making great progress, just because I don't hit my deadline doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means that I have bigger and better ideas coming along the way that keep growing. And so I now need to extend the deadline as well.
Absolutely. I think I forget exactly which author it was, but he was writing about expectations. And when you were mentioning it, we're removing expectations as a whole. I was like, oh, it just like clicked. And it was this one fellow who, it wasn't Stephen Pressfield, but it was this one fellow. He became a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War.
Mm.
And his colleagues, his other troops, his band of brothers, I suppose, they were all thinking, oh yeah, by Christmas we're gonna be out of here. And there was like 7 of them or something like that. And they're like, by Christmas we're coming. A Christmas would come and a Christmas would go, right?
Mm.
And they're like, oh, we're gonna be able to make it out for this time. Oh, just Easter. Oh, summer. Oh, September long weekend. Like anything, right? And there was the one fella who just kept on saying to himself, just get through today, just get through today, just get through today. And he was able to keep a level headed. He was able to stay energy neutral, like stay chill vibes during his prisoner of war. I do believe that he was the only person to survive, which is also a kind of a testament to this kind of mentality. But the rest of the troops were just so discouraged. They just fell into a depression. They fell into a place where they were just in a sucky mood, and then they just lost hope because they were just paying attention to the finish line rather than just paying attention to the day. And when you mentioned that, I was like, yes, like remove the expectation, because it's when we don't live up to the expectations, or when our reality and our expectations are not in alignment, that we end up getting flustered and frustrated and irritated with ourselves. And then we start lashing out and stuff like that. Maybe not, but
Yeah. Yeah. No. And that actually made me think of something. I saw Ed Milet in a conference last year, and he's telling a story, and I wish I could tell you the whole story, but I can't remember all the details, so I'll skip that part. But he did talk about a certain concept of, just like you were saying, and his was he was going through a really hard time, and he kept telling himself, I'm just not going to give up for one more day. I'm not going to give up for one more day. He would get everything he needed to do, make it through today, and then tomorrow morning it was just one more day, one more day. And he just kept showing up for himself every single day with the mindset of, I just have to get through today. Like, even as bad as today is, I just got to do this one more day. And that's what kept him going to then lead to his ultimate success as well.
I think that's awesome. I've for this year, I've adopted a philosophy, or a daily philosophy, that today is for nothing more than preparing for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been very, very helpful in productivity, but also like really making the day, quote unquote, simpler, not easy, but simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And that simplicity, even if I've found that I didn't want to do something and I still did it. And I'll actually share how I trained for this too, because I did train for it.
Okay.
So it's just getting things dialed in for today so that you just don't need to do it tomorrow. So it's just kind of what I found is the more things that you can do, it'll just accumulate over time, and then you just have a little bit less, and then it just the wheel of things to do never ends, but the maintenance of it is so much simpler. And the way that I train this kind of thought process, it's like today is meant to prepare for tomorrow. And I started with something small when I started practicing this, and it was just getting my coffee ready the night before. So even if I felt tired at the end of the day, I still thought to myself, today is preparation for tomorrow, and your future self is going to be so grateful for what you're doing now. And then the next day, I would wake up and my coffee was already ready. And I'm a little bit of a weirdo like this, but I was like, thank you, past Kyle. Thank you. Because a really neat concept, just crazy all over the place now, but a really neat concept is our present self is our past's future, and our present self is our future's past. So we can actually change the trajectory of our timeline based off of what we do today. And that's another thing too, is like we're having this conversation right now, but at some point, maybe I'll actually run into you at an Ed Milet conference, which I'm super jelly of. I haven't seen him yet, but maybe I'll see you there. And that's another thing that's kind of cool. Like our present day today is going to have probably at least a little ripple effect into the future. And that's from today. And then we'll be like, oh, future Chase, oh, future Kyle, way to record that, you guys. You guys are swell. Like, that's awesome. I love that stuff.
Yeah,
dude.
I love that.
Super cool. Whereabouts have you found the overlap of your experiences? So being a nurse, obviously there was like you get to see what the future of an individual is, but you got psych, then you got nursing, then you got ER. So I imagine your stress levels are significantly lower, which probably helps with work. But how have you found those the habit stack? I call it like a habit stack or a toolkit stack. How do you find that combination working together?
Are you meaning in terms of like the
Coaching, I suppose.
what's that?
The coaching, or sorry, you go ahead first.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to clarify the question a little bit. I don't know if I
Okay.
quite understood exactly what you're asking there.
So you've done psych, and
Mhm,
then you've done nursing, and now
mhm.
you're a coach. So how do those all combine? Is there anything that overlaps? Do you use the psych information to help clients in the present
Gotcha.
with that one? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Now I'm following you. So yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like no matter what anyone does in life, like everything's always a lesson, right? Like you're gonna learn things all throughout your life that you're gonna use in different ways, and it may not even show up the same way that you learned it, but like it's still gonna you're still gonna it's just compounding knowledge year after year, and so I mean, definitely. I mean, I jokingly talk to my clients sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm half therapist, half coach with them a lot of times, which I loved, and we love to have those conversations. And that's when again going back to like, what does it mean to actual coach? Is like those deeper conversations you get to have with those clients and those relationships you get to build. But a lot of that comes from having that psych background and being able to talk with my patients back then, and then understanding like where they're coming from with and leading with empathy and understanding like what shoes they've walked in throughout their entire life. And same thing now to working with my clients is understanding that, and also one thing that actually did an actual example I can give is one thing I learned in psych was trauma informed care. And this is basically realizing that everyone has gone through some sort of trauma throughout their life. And when we say trauma, it could be something as something super small and minor, or it could be something completely tragic. But everyone has some sort of trauma that they've been through at some point in their life. And so you approach everybody with that trauma informed care. And that's almost kind of like it lays over into coaching as well. Like I know there's a lot of things that, you know, I would say almost all my clients are comfortable and they've shared with me things that they've gone through in the past, but I also know there's probably things that maybe they haven't shared with me. And that's completely okay. Like I understand like there is that boundary there, but I still treat them knowing that they've been through a lot and probably more than I'll ever know. And so it's like leading with understanding that they might have gone through things that I may be unaware of, but always being receptive to learning more about them and more from them so I can continue to steer them in the correct path. So that is one clear thing that I've learned from like my psych nursing, ER nursing. Just, I mean, the ER is like the modge podge of everything combined, I think. So you get to learn a little bit of everything. And just even just like the medical background as well, just having the medical knowledge from working as a nurse and nursing school and such has all helped with coaching as well. And I don't know, like I feel like it's just understanding that even though like, because I mean, there's definitely I've had people before, like, oh, you're never gonna go back work as a nurse, and I'm like, probably not. Like I'm not gonna let my nursing license go just because I worked way too hard with that, blood, sweat, and tears, literally. So I'm not gonna let that go. But I also don't see myself going back as working as a nurse just because that's just not my who I am anymore. And like I will always have nurses will always have a special place in my heart. But all that said is like I'll still continue to use all of that knowledge. Like it wasn't time wasted. It wasn't that I, worked as a nurse for all those years, went to nursing school, and like I'm never going to use any of that. Like I'm using all of that every single day as a coach, even just in a different capacity.
I really like that. I have an interesting question. So let's say hypothetically you were able to time travel and you were able to go back and like hang out with your like past self 5 years ago. Let's say like the beginning, right? Uh what would that interaction be like, do you think?
Hmm. I mean, it would be definitely one that's I'm a very big believer in everything happens for a reason. So like I'm also one that's like I know some people would say like, oh, they go back and tell them don't do this, don't do that, or do this and do that. And that's great. Like there might be a couple of things that I could probably like go back and warn myself about. But for the most part, like I think everything happens for a reason. Like I would just say like maybe like enjoy the journey a little bit, more, right? Like don't be so as focused in on everything all the time, and like just learn to like take a step back and relax every once in a while. Cause I think about how much has happened since 2019, and it's just insane how much has changed in my life. So it's just wild when I think about that. Like it's just like there's so much that has happened, and I'm like, how much of that did I really receive and take in and cherish in that moment versus that it was just like kind of checking the boxes and just putting in the motions basically day by day.
Mhm.
So I think just slow down a little bit.
I think that's pretty cool. I often ponder that because I was actually chatting with Kendra the other day, and I just like said something. It was just something a way that my character was like at that point, like even 10 years ago, like 15 years ago for sure. Uh, but I said something, and she's like, or something having to do with my younger self judging me, kind of thing, right? Where I was naive, right? So I would just be like, "Oh, you blah 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 blah," like just being a dink. And I think that's always interesting to kind of think of what that conversation would be like going back in time and just having a conversation where it would. I'm not a fan of the butterfly effect. If there's the hazard of the butterfly effect, I would not go back in time because I wouldn't want to change anything. So that'd be freaky. But it's kind of cool, the idea that you get to reflect on who you were at one point, but it really brings like it brings a lot of awareness to the changing and the adapting and the growth that people go through. So it's pretty cool. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool, man. That's super cool. I have like a kind of a random question, to be honest, on that one.
Yeah.
But if you could write down one question on your bedside and have to answer it tomorrow morning, what would that question be?
Oh man. I guess just to like clarify what I'm kind of thinking here, is this sort of like almost kind of like a almost like from like a journal prompt kind of perspective, like kind of thing, or is this like a like
Could
for
be
like
that.
I'm personally asking myself this question tomorrow morning?
Yes. That sounds
Hmm.
fun.
Well, being that tomorrow morning is Monday when we're recording this, um, I would ask myself, how are you going to best show up for yourself just this week? Again, kind of like going back to referring to like just focusing on like the one more day mentality, but also like what's the best way I can show up for myself this week?
I really like that. I really like that a lot. I'm probably going to apply that tomorrow and see what happens. What do you think your answer would be? Do you know?
Um, we've been going through a lot of not necessarily changes, but just a lot going on inside of our business right now. Chris and I, and I think it's just more so like I definitely like one thing that I've made sure to like never lose track of is like to like, a little more background and context so you'll know and the listeners know. I am COO of the company, but I also am still an assistant coach. So I'm working with about 20 clients myself still. And I always make sure that they are taken care of first before the COO role. And I'm always looking for more ways to continue to over deliver for them and be there more often for them and be a part of their lives and making sure that they are doing what they need to be doing and making sure that I'm supporting them the way they expect me to. And so I think it would be more so like reevaluating that, going back, connecting with them each individually more at a deeper level to really figure out how I could continue to make their lives better.
That's cool. Yeah, I had that question kind of popped in my head. I'm like, that's an interesting question. I think I'm just going to give that one a go. So thank you very much for the answer. That was a great answer. I really like
Thank
that.
you.
That was fantastic. Going going into the service of others immediately into that. Big time happy about that, my friend.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Where do you Oh yeah, may as well go with this one. This is a cool question because I really intrigued with the idea of you kind of getting in there before any sort of hospital situations. If you were to be able to, with the comparison between what you're doing now and then what you've experienced and that prehabilitation style, I'm just using prehab because I'm not sure what to really use for a
Yeah.
word. But what do you think would be some really cool shifts? Like if you had a magic wand and you can just overnight just magically change things up, I guess in the realm of health, physical health, mental health. I also like to say mental and physical fitness, because I find that when we say mental health or physical health, it also kind of like similar to Kant. It's like we are either healthy or not.
Mm-hmm.
When mental fitness and physical fitness, it goes along with the fluctuations of life. There is more adaptability with that one. But given your experience and what you view and what you've uh, got to see, where would you shift things up for health, I guess, overall?
I think it's more so just creating more awareness. And I that's something that we are really big about with Conquer Fitness, and that's is just creating more awareness for people out there, like understanding that like where are the biggest problems, where are the gaps, where can we fill in the gaps, how can we create more of that awareness? I mean, just like tying more into like I think about like when a client first comes to work with us, basically, it's like, how can we just start creating awareness? Like, what are you eating? How are you moving each week? How is your mental health? Like, actually asking all these questions to yourself and figuring out like where are we even starting at? Um, because and I'm gonna actually steal this analogy from my from Chris, the CEO I work with. He I love this analogy he uses about awareness. Is like basically like the reason we need awareness is like imagine if we are like I'm living in Virginia right now and he lives over in Michigan, and like let's say we're driving to Disney and I need the directions to get to Disney, but then he sends me the directions from Michigan to Florida when I'm driving from Virginia to Florida. Well, now that's not going to help me. So I need to create that awareness and have an understanding of like what do I actually need to then make progress. Because if I just picked up something random like instructions from or directions from Michigan to Florida, I'm probably not going to get very far because they're not what I need. So first we need to create that awareness and figure out what do you even need before progressing forward. And I think that if a lot of people could answer that question, first thing, they can make a lot more progress. And that goes with all terms of health. Like what do you need for your mental health, mental fitness? What do you need to be doing for your physical fitness? If you could answer that what do you need question, I feel like that could get people started a lot sooner.
I like that. What do you need? Creating that awareness on what do you need. I like that. I like that. That's a great instruction too, because yeah, I completely agree with the awareness part. That's a great analogy as well. Because if we don't, it's like, yeah, it's like anytime that you put locations into Google Maps, you put your own location and then you put the
Mm-hmm.
location of where you want to go. And if you don't put the location of where you want to go, or at least if you put the location of where you want to go into where you're at already, which I think is the process of like trying to accomplish things fast.
Mhm.
There's you got to do up the proper gap in between. Ah,
Exactly.
that's good, man. I'm gonna steal the analogy. Just a heads up.
Go right ahead.
Cool.
I use it all the time now that I heard it from him.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it's so true because it's just on a lack of awareness. We don't know what we don't know. And that's why having an objective set of eyes or just someone that we trust as a confidant that has our best interests at heart or and also has good intentions to be able to kind of be honest with us and not enable us, but to encourage us to be able to develop that awareness. I think that's cool too. And it's really tough to develop awareness because then you oftentimes have to go outside of yourself or outside of what you're already aware of. And then we also have that fear of looking silly all over again.
Mm, absolutely.
That's totally fair. How has how do you, have you found that there is a way to mitigate that fear of developing the awareness, or what are your thoughts on that one?
This is the tricky one, right? Because I feel like there's a lot more that goes into this, and people are afraid to create that awareness because then it identifies their biggest gaps and their biggest weaknesses. And I think we all have this sense of pride and ego, right? Like, and not necessarily in a negative way, but just like we all have this. And it's like when you're basically telling someone to create all this awareness, you're also asking them to identify and expose themselves of all their weaknesses that they have. And that's a very vulnerable point for somebody to have to like admit to all these shortcomings. And so I think it's important to realize that I like to always tell people like when we're creating this awareness for yourself, it's not about exposing your weaknesses. We're also exposing your strengths as well. And two, we're also going to, I am a big believer in we have two options when we look at these weaknesses. We can look at them and be upset, we can cry, we can, be frustrated with ourselves and, talk down to ourselves when we have these weaknesses exposed. Or you can pull up your bootstraps and actually do something with them. Like that's your choice. Like I'm here to help you expose your weaknesses, but I can also help you with the plan to use them to make them your strengths as well. Or you can sit there and have your pity party and not do anything with them. Like that's your choice. So I think that's the thing is people don't like exposing them, but it's like it's only a problem if we're gonna expose them and not do anything with them, right? It's just like digging up all the trash and then just throwing it in the corner and not and acting like it's like we didn't find it, right? Like it's like you can do that, but you're not going to make it anywhere. But the first part of change is identifying your strengths and weaknesses and then playing off of each of those.
I like that. I find that with developing the awareness, and I think, yeah, developing awareness in as many aspects of someone's life as possible, just and having that courage to do so, it decreases so much mental bandwidth in my mind. It's craziness. And another thing that's really cool with awareness as well. Oh, where was I going to go with that one? Is when you're develop. Oh, ah, it went away. Dang. But when we have awareness, when we develop that awareness, I think it becomes a lot easier to realize what we actually value and what we don't value. And many of the weaknesses that we carry around with ourselves, we can eliminate many of those as well. And I think that through a process of elimination rather than addition, it's a lot easier to get someone to kind of ease into that awareness and just recognize, oh, maybe I don't need to do a bajillion things. Maybe I could schedule things in because it's it makes it easier to like build things up when you're just tearing things away. And I think that that's something that many people probably find to be easier is acknowledging what a weakness is and who doesn't want to remove a weakness to the best of their ability or a perceived weakness.
Mm-hmm.
That's also another thing too, is shifting people's perceptions to change the narrative of stories as well.
Yes.
Like the can't woke kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's freaking cool, man. Strength and weakness. I love that you said that too. You got some freaking good knowledge bombs. I got a solid couple of notes here, dude.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Totally gonna steal maybe like most of it.
It's all good. By all means, please do.
That is awesome. So just out of curiosity, because on that note, you definitely dropped some sick knowledge bombs, and the head, the heart, and the intuition are definitely on fire right now, my friend. So in saying that, I'm gonna offer up this question just in case. I want to make sure that I pulled everything I could out of your mind. But it is there anything that has to be said that hasn't been said yet?
If I had to add just one more thing, I think that would be, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to put a little bit more of a spin on it and add on to it a little bit. But it's this purpose of, realizing that, you have the capability of achieving whatever you want to do, when we talked about that a little bit earlier. And I think a lot of people, they are quick to shoot themselves down that they can't do those things again, like versus that can't versus won't thing. But I think it's also important that an exercise that I love talking to some clients through, and actually I did this with a group as well, took them through like a little visualization of basically like understanding, like, think about like, if you were to look back or look forward 5-10 years from now, think about if you were exactly who you wanted to be, you felt the way you wanted to, you looked the way you wanted to, you had everything in life that would make you happy and whole. If you were happy with that person, now think about this right now. That person is the same person as you were right now. It's still the same person. You're not a different person. You may be a different person per se, but you still have all the capabilities and the power and the strength and the worthiness that you do right now to become that person. So stop waiting for something magical to happen and realize that you are who you are today. And that's the same person that you can be who you want to be 10 years from now.
Damn. Yeah. Okay, that one had hit the head, the heart, and the intuition. Jeez, that was great. That was a great one. I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. That is awesome. So, my friend, on that note, damn, that was a good one. First and foremost, I'm just letting it sink in a little. I hope the people listening also let that sink in to understand that they are capable of what they even perceive to be capable of, right? I think having the courage to be able to pursue something that's maybe that's challenging and fulfilling at the same time, that's the way to be. That's good, man. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I like to end the podcast with two questions. Once again, they're thinkers for sure. So, first one is going to set the scene. It's the end of your days, my friend. This podcast doesn't exist. No content exists. It's just you on your deathbed, surrounded by the people that you care for. What is the last thing that you want to share?
Oh man.
Or what
This
is the
one's
last piece of
deep.
advice you wish to pass on?
All right, it is a thinker. I think I would say, this is kind of one of the first things that came to mind, so I'm going to roll with it, is stop holding your own self back. Like, everyone's capable of doing so many amazing things that they have no clue they're able to do just yet. But if they were just to try, sure, you might fail a time or two, but if you keep trying, you're going to do something amazing. So just keep pushing forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great one. And then the final question, the very best version of Chase Smith is sitting next to you. The person that you visualize 5 years, 10 years from now to be like an absolute rock star. All the characteristics that you want to take in. You turned all your weaknesses to strengths and all your strengths into double strengths. That person is sitting next to you right now. What piece of advice does that Chase have for you during this season of your life?
Realize that life comes and goes through phases, and there are going to be some really great phases when you feel like you're on cloud nine and everything's going right. There will be phases when you feel like everything's going wrong. And there'll be phases when you feel like you're just checking boxes and just doing the normal. And I think it's important to realize what phase you're currently in right now and do the best you can, given you knowing what phase you're in right now, and keep pushing on from there because you'll get to the next phase soon.
Fantastic, dude. Absolutely fantastic. So, folks, that is what I got for you in today's episode. Where can people find you, Chase?
Probably the best place to find me is Instagram at changing_chase. And also you can come check out our podcast, the Chasing Health podcast. As I mentioned earlier, the guy I work with, Chris Bielhan, him and I co-host that podcast together.
Awesome. Very much appreciated. Well, folks, if you loved today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me with my handle at DabberDudeKyle, along with at changing_chase. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, keep up the kindness, and I hope your day treats you as good as you look.